Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Bold Moves podcast. We're here to motivate entrepreneurs like you to either get going or keep going on your business journey by sharing inspiring stories and bold moves from fearless founders. And the fearless founder we have with us today is Eryn Morgan. She is a business coach for creatives. Her clients are designers and creative entrepreneurs who have amazing skills, but sometimes struggle with the business part of having a business. So Eryn totally gets how having creative freedom can sometimes feel at odds with building systems, pricing, offers, and even sales. She helps every client, yes, even the introverts, find their business strategy that feels good. So Eryn's coaching style is engaging, relatable, and blends humor with tough love to help even the most accidental entrepreneur attract their dream clients. Welcome, Eryn.
Hey there, Angela. Thank you so much for having me. What fun. I'm so motivated by your intro music. I was like, all right, let's go.
I
It's so
know. I just
exciting.
picked that the other day. I was like, I need something a little punchier. It's like called Bold Moves, so it needs to be have like a
Yeah.
rock theme. So I went and found that on
I
some
was
site
totally
and
feeling it.
went with
I
it.
love it.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you're here. I always like to start the discussion by just asking the guests to share about their journey into entrepreneurship. So, how did you start your business? When did you start it, and why did you start your business? Give us some background.
Yeah, I was the total accidental entrepreneur. So it's not surprising to me that I actually support those kinds of women and creatives in business. I was the director of marketing at a nonprofit, and we brought New York Times bestselling authors to Pittsburgh. At the time, I lived in Pittsburgh to speak to really large audiences. It was an amazing job. I loved it. I got to touch on all the different pieces of having a small nonprofit, everything from sales and marketing to donor relations and event planning. And there's just so many pieces that went into being there. And as sometimes things happen, there was a bit of a leadership transition. My mentor and boss and idol and all the things, Jane, retired. I stayed on at her request for a little while just to keep the ship sailing smoothly, but ultimately knew that I needed to go my own path. And so the kind of accidental part of it was there was a plan, right? There was a very smooth transition plan where I was going to leave the organization in a great shape, find my replacement, train. Everybody was on the same page. We had this excellent meeting where we talked through the plan. And the next morning, my boss fired me. So, yeah, that wasn't exactly the plan. So, with 2 months of cash in the bank, I got busy. I got busy marketing, and I used all the courage that I had learned and sort of built up, the resilience I'd built up, and the relationships that I had built over the last few years in that creative community. And I got my first client, and I never looked back. So really
Wow.
get into this creative small business space because that's where my friends were. All my girlfriends were starting their own photography businesses or web design businesses, and they were coming to me being like, how do I do the marketing part? So that's where I got started, and it's been almost 10 years, so very fun.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, I hear a lot of stories similar to yours where it's just like one day, well, here we are. I don't have a job anymore and I've got to figure things out for myself.
Yeah, she said, you're a
Yeah.
star, and then she fired me, so that was fun.
Well, that's sending some mixed signals, isn't it?
Right? I was like, what am I supposed to think about this? I'm a little confused, but it's been
It
amazing.
all
I'm
worked out.
I'm really blessed. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
it all
totally
worked
blessed to
out.
be
You
here.
haven't looked back. 10 years is a pretty good stretch, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about your niche. So we mentioned that you serve creative entrepreneurs at all stages.
Sure.
Can you tell me, I'm sure it didn't start out that way. Like I'm sure like most of us, you're trying just to get your first client and whoever that was, right? And you're serving everybody. Can you tell me more about the move you made by niching down, why you did it, how you selected this vertical and just tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so this was a bit of a trial and error, as I think it is for so many people. My very first client was a wedding florist. So she did these amazing wedding floral. And I remember I used to actually drive to her office and coach her at her, floral studio. And it was amazing. But over time, what I realized is that all of my clients were creative, and I was capturing, some of the folks who are a little bit on the edges. Like I would get coaches occasionally, or people who are sort of in the financial space, those CFOs or bookkeepers. They're all great. They all have the same kind of fundamental needs in their business. But where I decided that the niche was important, was critical for me and my energy, was because there's certain kind of business models that sort of track, right? So when
Mm.
I'm teaching to a group of creatives who are all in that design space, I can teach to them in a way that allows them to each hear and receive what they need, because they're all traveling down that project-based creative service path. So my desire to serve, I'm like, I want to serve everybody. I want to help everyone. But when it really comes down to leveraging my energy, it's really about not even my time, it's really my energy. I needed to have things get a little bit more narrow, a little more standardized, so that I could really leverage that energy in terms of how I teach and how I work with my clients and train them. So I made that strategic choice to really niche down. And that doesn't mean I can't help those other folks and that they still don't come to me. They do, but they don't always fit inside of like my mastermind, for example. I'm not going to take one of those outlier business types, because it kind of fractures the group in terms of the way that they learn as a group. So that's why I've made that choice. And it really wasn't until fairly recently that I also realized that, ding ding, my marketing gets easier. The
Mm.
narrower I am, the clearer I am about who I really want to serve, the easier the marketing gets. So it's allowed me to be much more nimble and flexible in terms of the ideas I can produce at the last minute. I can have an idea and be like,
Yeah.
oh, I know how to get that out the door. So it's been great.
Yeah, I see that totally. And I like how you let it happen organically too. You kind of tested the waters, worked with a few clients, and noticed some
Yeah.
patterns about
And
who you
screwed
like
up a
working
bunch.
with.
Yeah, it's that too.
Yeah,
Making
yeah,
a lot
so
of mistakes
that.
along the way, right?
Oh, absolutely. We all do. We all do. But yeah, I think it's not helpful when you try and force a niche that you have maybe no experience in. I think that's a lot harder to gain momentum if you do something like that. So my advice, I don't know what your advice is to your creatives, but my advice that I give to my clients is like, if you're just starting out, you want to kind of you want to think about maybe what your interests are, and that could be a potential niche, but work with some different types of industries or, personality types and all that. See what you like, see what fits with you first before you go picking something arbitrarily just because maybe it's, lucrative or something like that. You
Sure.
might end up
Yeah.
hating it, right? You have to
Right.
have that experience first, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's very sound advice, and nothing harder than working with somebody who's decided their lane when it's not actually their lane. I mean, we've had to make some really interesting pivots over, clients who've come to me and they're certain they work with this particular kind of person or this, type of business, and it's like, actually that's not going to get you where you want to go, right? There's all kind of reasons why it might not.
Yeah.
So having that early experimentation is really, I think that's super wise advice that you give. Very smart.
Yep. Yep, I think so too. Um, and I can see how when you do eventually niche down though, it really does help you, like you say, streamline your messaging, even like where you hang out online, because you're gonna be, the one and only in a group of your people rather than just being one of many in a group of people that do everything that you do as well. So it's like nailing your messaging, having that laser focus rather than sort of trying to cast your net too wide, is really smart, and it helps you be really manage your resources really well because you're not,
Yeah.
you know, spraying and praying kind of thing. You're really
Yeah.
laser focused, so you can allocate your marketing budget really wisely and really be focused as well. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
love it.
Anytime you can find a little bit of focus, it's a great way to conserve resources and be able to
Yeah.
allocate them to where you really need them the most. That's smart.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about something that's hard for a lot of creatives. I'm a creative in the creative space as well. I had to learn
Mhm.
Lots of bumps on the road. I've been in business for
Yeah.
16 years, so similar timeline to you. And there's lots of things I did wrong and lots of things I had to learn. The first is one of the major things is pricing. So that can
Mhm.
be a real hurdle to creatives, I know. I really advocate for getting away from hourly billing
Mhm.
for a lot of reasons, but we're not going to talk about my philosophy right now because I want to talk about to you about yours, right?
I agree
But
with you. We're talking the
yeah,
same language here.
yeah, okay,
There's a
so
time and a place for hourly, but
yeah,
ultimately, yeah, I think
yeah.
you're
So
advising me.
how do you approach this charging what you're worth with your clients?
Yeah. So first things first, you're priceless. Like we can't that phrase really irks me because charging what you're worth, it's like how do we put that how do we put a number on that? So
Mm,
where I really like to go with this is I think about pricing for transformation. So if we
definitely.
think about something that you purchased in the past where it's a teeny little bit of money, let's say it's $37, and there's a monthly Q&A call. Are you going to show up? Maybe if it matches your calendar, if you don't forget, if you're not, ready for a nap or overwhelmed with client work. Cool.
Right.
So then imagine the thing that you buy that's $370. You're a little bit more invested in that. And then
Mhm.
if you go to that next level and you're like $3,700, now you're starting to pay attention. And
Mhm.
when the investment is $37,000, you're locked in, right? So this is just an example of how pricing can connect to commitment, and the commitment is where
Mhm.
the action comes, right? So when you're in motion, when you're in action in your business at a level of commitment marked by a transformation that you're trying to achieve, you're going to get those results. You're going to show up all the way. You're going to fully use those resources. So that's how we would potentially look at our investment. We flip that when we're thinking about our clients, right? What we're actually trying to do is put them in a position where they're able to invest in the transformation that they want through the work that they do with us. And there's different ways to produce that transformation. There's
Mm,
the slow and steady, there's the really fast and intense and very high level VIP type of offer.
mhm.
There's DIY, there's self-paced courses. There's just all these different ways that people can invest in themselves. And the trick of it is for you as a business owner to give your ideal client some matches, some price points
Mhm.
that let them get that transformation in the way that best matches for them. So we're always thinking about what's going to get them to show up. And I find for me and for my particular ideal client that they're in a space where if I don't charge enough money that it
Right.
hits their bank account every month and they go, "Oh yeah, I got to recommit. I got to recommit. I got to recommit to doing this work." Then they fade off into the sunset. So
Mm,
that breaks my heart. It means they don't get the thing that they desired. They don't get that transformation. And so I've learned how to kind of thread that needle of price point between what is reasonable based on their business model in terms of what they
mm,
can afford, right? If they're not charging enough for their projects in the first place, those higher level price points, super high ticket, that's not going to be a match for where they are. And so we got to match where they are in their business model, also based on the kind of transformation they're looking to achieve. And so there becomes this kind of pricing is an art, in my opinion. It's not something
yeah.
that is so here are the steps to pricing your offers, right? If it's that linear, it's probably, a off the rack kind of strategy that might not work for
Mhm.
each business owner individually.
Interesting. I like what you said about the phrase charging what you're worth. There is something a little icky about that, right? Like, I mean, we're all priceless, really. It's not
Right?
about your worth. It's
Yeah.
pricing for transformation. I totally get that. And yeah,
Mhm.
so that makes a lot more sense. And so with that, would you then advocate for clients to have, or anyone, any business owner to have sort of like tiered offerings?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I love that. There's often a core offer, the thing that really is the thing you want
Right.
to sell that gets the best transformation, that the timeline usually is a good match. But sometimes people, especially now, sometimes people just need to sort of dip their toe in and see if they can trust you, right? So in my business, I have a 90-minute intensive. It's a small bite way for
Mm,
somebody to come into my world, test me out. Can they trust me? Do I resonate with them? And this wasn't necessarily a thing that we needed in 2017, but in 2020, almost five, we really do need that small bite way that they can start to connect with us and learn. And then I also have clients that are like, Eryn, I need to go fast. I need to really come up with a big win here very quickly. And while the slow and steady, consistent accountability way is great, what I really need to do is dive into the deep end of the pool, and they're ready to go there. And so by having that flexibility in the way that I can serve, the way that I can make my offers, it gives my clients the kind of choice that I think that in this day and age they're really looking for. It also leaves me very, very flexible to create custom offers that really truly match the person I'm speaking with. So maybe they need a little bit of this, but they also need a little bit of that. And it gives me that
mhm.
a place that I can bring that together and make something special just for them.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. So, yeah, having that bite-sized offer is really a good way to introduce people to you at, uh, less commitment, I guess, is what I'm looking
Sure. And
for.
it's really only focusing, and this is where I think there's that misconception that low price, that a small bite has to be low price. It doesn't necessarily
Mm,
have to be,
true.
but so it, you could look at it like solving one
One
problem,
problem.
one
Yeah.
piece of a larger puzzle, right? So I had a
Right.
client the other day who was working with
Mhm.
a business owner who had a very, very messy tech
Mm.
ecosystem on the back end of his business, and he wanted, this very micro solve. And she was like, well, we can do that, but really what I'm seeing is we need all of these other things. Let's just dive in and solve this one problem first, and then once we get to know each other a little more, we can see if going to the next thing is the correct fit. It's still an investment for him. He still has to put a lot of money into solving that one problem, but it's super laser focused, and it gives the ability to have a very clear outcome on what does success look like for that particular
Mhm.
offer. So it's really
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah, and solving that first step issue that they have would help them gain trust in you, would
Yep.
help them have a quick win, right?
Yep.
So they're at least
Exactly.
getting a step further up the ladder. Maybe you're helping them create more revenue for their business so that they can then hire you for the bigger package as well.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes,
yeah.
exactly. That 90-minute intensive I do oftentimes becomes a cash infusion call, right? We got to put
Right.
some money on the board.
Yep.
How are we going to do that? And we're looking for a
Love that.
very quick win kind of strategy. I
Yeah.
can't solve all your business problems in 90 minutes. God, if I
No.
could, but like we can get somewhere. We can make a real dent in the overall challenge that you're having. So,
Yeah, that makes a lot of
yeah.
sense. Where do you see, like, 'cause this is a lot to create the whole value ladder and product
Yeah.
ladder. Where do you see a good place to start? Is it with the one-to-one, the core offer, doing that first, or is it with the lower offer? Or where do you see that someone starting in the creative field? Like, where's a good place to start?
Yeah, I always like to have them build out their core offer first. And that core
Okay.
offer, I do some super simple math, Angela. Take what you
Mhm.
want to make in a year,
Mhm.
divide it by the number of people that you feasibly think you could serve in that core offer. And whatever the number is that comes out is the price of your program, that average price, right?
Perfect.
So if it's $100,000 a year that you want to make and you know you can serve 10 people, then your core offer needs to be $10,000. It doesn't need to be pay in full 10K. It can be built into a payment plan. But if
Yeah.
on average you're selling one person a month that 10K offer, you get to your goal. It's oversimplified just a little bit, but sometimes we spiral into this place of it's so complicated. It really doesn't have to be, right? And so then when you're solid in that, you know what that core offer is, then think about how could we tweak it a little bit up with maybe some speed or a little bit of a VIP piece that could tweak it up. And then how would we strip out just one little component and tweak it down to get to that starter? It's not about creating
Mm,
three separate offers. It's taking your core, tweaking up and tweaking down, and then you get that stack. Because
mm.
the end of the day, what you're really hoping that the prospect you're speaking to does is to pick the core offer,
Of
right?
course.
And they can hear these other ways, and that's really supportive in the sales process for lots of reasons, but we're really trying to guide them to the thing that we most want to sell because we know it gets them the transformation they like.
Yeah, that's smart about just starting with one thing, and then just taking out some pieces or adding some pieces to make it
Mhm.
similar, but not so you're not racking your brain trying to come up with so many different offers. That's
Yeah.
pretty stressful, especially when you're starting out your business.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, just get to your stable that stable number initially. Just find the
mm,
offer you can sell, and you'll tweak it and streamline it and make it faster and make it better as you go along, but you don't have to have it perfect. Just get
mm,
going, get selling it, and then each time you do it, you'll get a little stronger, a little clearer.
mm. I'm curious what you have to say about validating those offers. Is there any kind of validation process that you get your clients to go through, or how does that work for you? Um,
Yeah, so I I really like to look at what's around them because 9 times out of 10, by the time people have come to me, there have been people around them that have come and said, "Oh, I'd love to, but I can't." For whatever insert objection here reason they've given you. The thing that I find is most critical in those moments is that we learn how to sell and overcome those objections and really listen into what the objections are and what they're telling us about our offers. So sometimes, most times, the offer is essentially validated. Like websites, they're validated. People want them, people need them. We know that it's something people buy. It's a question of how are you selling it? How are you presenting that offer and framing out the support? And that's usually where I hear the tweak. Or it's they need to just be willing to ask for the sale and they get real squeamish at the end and they don't want to say, "Hey, are you ready to start working together?" And we have to build confidence in those like micro places, less so validating because usually what my creatives are selling are things that people want. So it's just
right.
those tweaks.
Yeah, makes sense. That makes total sense.
Yep.
So yeah. So speaking of product ladders and core offers and all that, I know that you advocate as well for recurring revenue,
You can get
recurring
it.
revenue
But
streams.
for
So
people
a
as a
lot of
creative, it's not always easy.
yeah. Yeah, it's not always easy for us to come up with that. We're really project focused and, focused on selling, like, the one-to-one stuff, but,
Mhm.
what are some creative ideas for adding recurring revenue streams to your business?
Yeah, so depends on what you do, but we think about where, when we're done with the beautiful website or when we've created that brand, what are the gaps that keep people from actually utilizing that wonderful tool that you've made for them? And usually in the gap is where the recurring revenue is. So, for example, let's use my WordPress designers as an example. Um, WordPress sites break. And they updates, and there are things that need to happen. And when you are serving a client who's on WordPress, um, if they're not a web designer, if that's not their genius work or the thing that they, live for, chances are they're going to neglect it. So there's a
Mm,
place there, even if it's a tiny little bit per website client who is on WordPress. There's that tiny little bit of place where you can put some recurring revenue and you say, that's not going to add up. I have a client who legit put $30,000 on her baseline with recurring revenue just
wow.
doing WordPress updates. And it didn't take her all month because with that kind of revenue, you can hire support or streamline it with tools. Um,
Mm,
but it was all because she was, and guess what? She's maintaining relationship,
yeah,
retaining the relationship.
good.
And so that person comes back for their next website, for the other business, or they refer to a friend, or they're ready for a refresh. And
Mm,
she's keeping them in that container and allowing them to be supported, have everything moving smoothly forward, but then also thinking of her first when it comes for their next project. So if you can find it in your business, and most creatives can, but you may just need to build a little client roster or have some experiences to find where it matches for you.
yeah, and I love how systematic you are about things, so finding the gap, like, anyone can use this advice, like, where's the gap from the
Yeah.
client being able to utilize what you gave them? Where's that gap? And so that sparks ideas for every person wherever what no matter what they're selling in their business, so I love that advice. What would you say how do you help your clients, like, start to implement some of these recurring revenue ideas without feeling overwhelmed. Because like that WordPress thing, that's a great idea. I feel like, what if I get bombarded with, updates and all this kind of thing, while I'm still trying to work on new projects, and then implementing the systems to serve these clients as well as my one-to-one clients. What can people think about there,
Mhm.
as far as the recurring revenue goes?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things in that question. So
Yeah.
first things first, we're always looking for stabilization. So is your revenue stable? Do you know where that next client is going to come from? Do you have a solid plan? And we're usually talking, remember back in kindergarten where you were learning to, tens and the one little one like black, and you learn 1 + 1 is 2, and then the tens and then the hundreds. And like we had all these
Mhm.
manipulative tools to learn. We're talking tens. We're talking tens and 20s, not hundreds and thousands. At the point in which your web design business is serving 100 clients a year,
Mhm.
well, we have totally different problems because you got a revenue way over $1 million if you're doing it right. And now we're having a whole different conversation, right?
Right.
Most of my clients are in the 5 to 10s to 20s. And so that initial stabilization is key. And
Mm.
then we start to say, okay, what's the next thing we want to focus on? If it's recurring revenue, we're not going to just dive into the deep end of the pool and just sell everybody we know. We're going to start with one client, and we're going to
Mm.
reach out and we're going to make an offer and say, hey, would this be something that matches? Listening to their feedback, finding out if it's a good fit. Oh, it is? They're going to sign on the dotted line? Great. Now we're going to build the system around that one person. We need a contract. How are we going to have them pay? Figuring
Mhm.
all that out in the very micro. And the tendency is to dive in and tell everyone, pause. Let's just get one person in the door, get it streamlined, get it feeling really good, and now let's tell the next person. So I use
Mm.
this same method. It's a term I use from golf. My dad was a golf coach, and they have this term on the golf course called repair and replace, right? So
Okay.
anytime that you're using your wedge and you take a divot, there's two things you can do. You can either replace the grass if it came off in one like nice little smooth strip, or oftentimes you'll find like a little bit of like a sand and silt mixture that they make that you can just pour on the spot. It
Mm.
plants the grass seed and it repairs it essentially. So
Got it.
I use that same method with clients. We're not going to fire all our clients at once. We're not going to raise our prices on everybody at once. We're going to go repair and
Mm.
replace. If somebody says yes, great. Bring them into the next thing. If they say no, that's okay. Now let's get one
Mhm.
person to replace them. Great. They're at the new price point. That's feeling stable. Okay, who's next? And so I use this method of repair and replace for any
Mm.
new offers, for up-leveling pricing. My goal is to not shock the
Yeah.
nervous system of my client by asking them
Yeah.
to do some big, huge thing. We're always focusing on slow and steady. How do we take the
I
very
like
next
that.
step? Yeah.
I like that. I like that. I took a business coaching program. It's where I met my business partner that I had a couple years ago, and they did mention about raising prices, and so I know before my business partner became my business partner, she did this, but she kind of did it across the board, and she lost one of her biggest clients, and it was a big
Mm-hmm.
problem for her. So, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
like your approach a lot better, and I like the repair and replace, concept too. That's super smart. I don't play golf,
Yeah.
so I would be doing a lot of that. I don't
Me
I
too.
don't hit
My
the ball
goodness.
very well. Yeah, so, recurring revenue. So, like
Mhm.
you mentioned with that, there is the relationship, the ongoing relationship, which helps with, even with them referring you, like, you're top of mind
Mhm.
because, you're charging for that service every month or
Mhm.
whatever, and maybe you're working with them every now and then on those updates or whatever you're doing for them. So, there's that, top of mind factor as well. But, what are some other tips about, client like, managing client relationships that you would give to entrepreneurs to ensure their long-term success? Because without clients, we're just doing a hobby, right?
Right. Yeah, we have to be real careful that it doesn't become an expensive hobby. But one of the things that I always think about how do we really care for the people
Mm.
who we serve? Like, what's that process like to, there's nothing. So I'll use a silly little example. In this day and age with software, like my Yoga Glow membership, which I love Yoga Glow, I really do. But I happen to know that when I go at the renewal time and tell them I'd like to cancel, please, they will
Mm.
give me an offer that gives me some kind of a discount. Right now, they're a
Yeah.
software, right? But the reason they're giving me that discount is because they realize that retaining my business is cheaper than
Mm.
going and finding a new client, right? The same is true for us in our business. And this
Mm.
doesn't mean discount necessarily, but what it means is relationship. So I would rather send a beautiful bouquet of birthday flowers to a client
Mm.
who is no longer a past client that I
Okay.
remembered her birthday the second week of July and have her go, oh my gosh, she remembered I exist. And I'm not even
Mm.
working with her anymore. What's
Hmm.
that going to do? It's going to draw her back in with relationship. And um, it's not always about sending flowers. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of ideas I use depending on each client's business, but retaining the relationship. So recurring revenue, the way to recurring revenue is recurring relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's the same concept of how are we staying in touch? You worked so hard to find this person. They
Yeah.
invested with you, they trusted you, and that recurring relationship is going to have the dividends, whether or not they pay
Mhm.
you or whether they're referring you or just being a wonderful advocate for you
Yeah.
on social media, supporting your posts. I mean, there's so many varieties, but it's really about recurring relationships. And so when we go back to talking about tens and twenties, not hundreds and thousands, it's
Yeah.
possible to retain those relationships and build on that. And that really
Mm.
truly shows how much you care about people. And that's what has the ripple effect. That's what puts that recurring revenue on the board.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about doing something like that with a past client. That's smart. I suppose it does take some intentionality and some forethought to kind of know, like in this case, know when their birthday is or
Mhm.
know what kinds of
Mhm.
things they like. Is that something you advocate for as well with your clients? Is like when you're setting up your sales system, your intake process, maybe you're asking some of these questions for,
Yes.
thinking about future engagements and things like that, or yeah.
Exactly. It's all about onboarding process for that type
Mhm.
of information because they don't know what your systems are. So when you're asking
Right.
things like their birthday or their favorite color at the beginning, it's just part of your process. They answer the question.
Right.
They don't go, why does she want to know my favorite color? Pink, by the
Yeah,
way.
I wonder
But
about that.
like,
Yeah.
right? It ultimately becomes one of those moments where they just follow the system because they're in the beginning
Got it.
stages with you. They're just learning, how do you work? And so
Mhm.
this is something that and I believe that this is something that has shifted over the past 5 to 6 years, and here's what I mean by
Mm.
that. In 2017, it was kinda like the wild, wild west of online business, and we could just get away with stuff. And it was not that we didn't care, it was that everything was shifting and changing and moving so fast, and people were buying. They didn't have the
Mhm.
same level of, skepticism or, reserve around trust that they do now. The game has changed. So,
Yeah.
we get a really cool opportunity here to sit down and say, how do I want to onboard my client? How do I
Mm.
want to take care of them during the process of working together? And what do I want that offboarding to look like? And it's a 10-15 minute exercise of thinking about it and just
Mm.
making a bit of a list of, okay, well, here's the things I would like to make note of in my business in terms of how I serve. The building process takes time, but the initial thinking of how do I want to treat this human who I care about, that's not actually that hard. And you really set yourself apart now if you do it. I went through
Mm.
this
Mhm.
amazing client experience a couple of months ago. I made an investment with a copywriter and I could see it. Every single piece of the process that I went through with her, she'd thought through it. Such that
Mm.
on our actual day where she was doing the writing, it was a very VIP style day.
Yep.
I got flowers. Like she
Yeah.
sent me flowers on the day of the writing.
Yep.
And that just stood out to me in a way that I went, wow, she really thought about this.
Yeah.
And those types of experiences now, um, that's what keeps people coming back. That's what gets people talking about you. And it's so micro and it's not
Yeah.
hard. It's just a little bit of thought and a little, a little bit of money here or there, a couple. But when I think about the return on relationship that you get from that little bit of time, that little bit of money, it's invaluable.
Yeah, so important, especially in the world of AI that we're living in right now, just creating that
Mhm.
personal touch with clients
Yes,
and doing
yes.
something special, like, at every stage, like, with your copywriter. Like, with
Mhm.
my VIP days, I've decided that I send them lunch on our day because I want them fully there, not having to
Yeah.
worry about lunch so we can
Mhm.
make the most of the day together, right? So that's, like, another touch
Exactly.
point that I give them, and like they say, people don't necessarily remember what you said or what you did together, but they
Mhm.
will remember how you made them feel, and that
Mhm.
pays
That's it.
dividends, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah. And you get this little ripple effect. I have to sort of show you what's on my desk here.
Uh-huh.
So, like,
Oh,
I'm
beautiful.
totally testing
Oh my
flower
gosh,
delivery
and
companies.
those are
These
almost like
are
your brand colors too.
Yeah,
Right?
these are there's lots of companies out there that send flowers, but I
Yeah,
feel like I need to test them to see which one I feel
right.
gives the experience I'm looking for. So
Yeah,
the byproduct of that is I get flowers on my desk, so I'm not sad, even as I'm testing out these different companies.
that's cool. There you go. Add some
Yeah,
beauty to your room, your
why
space
not?
there. Why not? So yeah, speaking of that whole system that you help
Mhm.
creatives with, like, one thing that's really painful for us, and I think you saw a post I made about this, about sales, right? So sales,
Yes.
we love what we do, we're great at what we do, we just
Mhm,
want to serve. But man, some of us, most of us, I would say, really hate sales, and
mhm.
it can be really daunting because a lot of us, I would say, are introverts. And I don't know
Yeah,
if you would agree with that, but
most.
yeah. What strategies do you recommend for just making sales feel a little more natural and less intimidating for creative
Yeah,
types?
this is a great question. So the benefit of being an introvert is that many of my introverted clients love to ask questions and then listen deeply for the answers. This is great news when you're in sales because I like to teach a very simple framework that I got from my mentor and best friend in sales. Oh, she's all my things. My best friend Laura. She teaches what I call the 5 steps to yes. That's what we call it. And when we go through the 5 steps to yes, first of all, it's 5 steps. It's not a script, so there's nothing to memorize. You are the
I like that.
script. And we're going to go through the process in a very organized way. So the first step is just about connect. It's connecting with the person that you're talking to, finding ways that you have things in common. And it's about, again, human, person, relationship. That's the part that matters. Like, do I like this person? Do they like me? Do we vibe? Do we have things in common? And then that next step is listen and learn. And in listen and learn, you're asking great questions and you're truly listening to the answers. And this has won me more clients than any other thing that I've ever done in my business because people will tell me things and
Mm,
I listen and I'm thoughtful in my next question or in my response. And what that does is says, oh my gosh, she cares about me. And
yeah.
that transcends everything. I'm not always the most, not always the least expensive, right? Sometimes I am the most that somebody's speaking to if they're talking to lots of different people, but they'll come back and say, you're not the cheapest, but you were the person who listened to me.
Mm,
So
yeah.
when you're going through your sales process, you get that advantage that you're wired to listen. You're wired to ask that next thoughtful question. And that's what
Mm,
really begins to guide you through your sales process, such that
mm,
you're just inviting the person that you're chatting with and getting to know and listening to their struggles and what their problems are related to the service that you offer. You're inviting them to invest in their transformation through you, right? It's not actually about you. You are producing a service, you are producing a product or whatever kind of deliverables in your creative business, but really you're helping them get to the outcome they
mm,
desire. And so that is a very feel good process. And it really helps move people through the journey of choosing whether this feels like a good fit for them. So when you have the 5 steps that I teach, it really walks you through that process and let you be yourself the whole way through. There's never an
Mhm.
icky part.
Mhm.
There's never a weird, ooh, now I have to. We don't even talk about investments and price. We talk about dollars and cents because everybody's got dollars and cents in their pocket. This is not a highly charged thing, right? We're always just trying to say, how can this feel good and be easier for us to be comfortable ourselves so that
Yeah.
the person we're speaking to feels comfortable too.
Yeah, those are all valid points, and I love that you say they're steps and they're not a script because when I was learning sales, I know I took some fancy courses and whatnot, and I did
Mhm.
have somewhat of a script, and I tried to follow it, and it was totally not my personality, not my style. It flopped, and I
Yeah.
felt even dumber than if I just hadn't
Oh, I
done
hate
that,
hearing
right?
that. Yeah,
So, it was
yeah.
not good, and so I do not recommend following a script. Having a loose,
Mm-mm.
idea of what, sections you wanna cover and
Yeah,
maybe some
yeah.
questions you would wanna ask, but don't follow it to a T,
Mm-mm.
and just being genuinely curious about the other person on the other side of the table or Zoom call or
Yeah.
whatever is really helpful, and being that advocate for them, like, sitting on the same
Mhm,
side of the table as them, not seeing
mhm,
this as a, like, "I have to win this
mm.
project or have to," no, see it as, I wanna do what's best for them, and even if that means I'm not the right fit for them, and
That's
I will
it.
refer them to somebody who is, like,
Mhm.
that takes the pressure off, and I think they can feel
Yes.
that too.
Yes, yes. You are advocating for their highest and best. You want them to win. You want them to be successful in whatever it is that you're doing together. And guess what? If they're not a good fit for you, they'll just make your life miserable inadvertently. So, like, maybe you don't take that client and drive yourself crazy, right? It's so much better to
Absolutely.
either refer the business or, release the opportunity than it is to take it on and have it just bring you out.
Yeah, absolutely, and having said that, maybe having some questions in there that would sort of give you a clue as to
Mhm,
whether they would be a good fit for you, something about
mhm.
maybe, what's your experience in working with if you're a web designer, other web
Yep.
designers, and maybe there's some clues there, like, if they're constantly
Yes.
complaining about who they were working with and they were awful
Mhm,
and things like this, maybe that's not a good fit for you, so being smart about what questions you ask, like, really strategic about why you're asking certain
yeah.
questions, because they're seeing if you're fit for them, but you're also seeing if they're fit for you as
Mhm,
well, so it goes both
mhm,
ways.
mhm. Yeah, there's
Um,
red flag questions, and one of the
yeah.
ones I'm always listening for is that personal responsibility. Are they blaming everybody else,
Mhm.
or are they
Right.
saying, "You know what? I'm gonna own this piece. I didn't do this thing, or I don't know." And it's okay when somebody
Mhm.
who among us woke up and went, "I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start a business," right? There's so many parts of being an accidental creative, an accidental entrepreneur that, like, we can go get MBAs and get, like, really fancy with econ and spreadsheets, and, like, we're inherently creative people, but that means that nobody taught us how to do this stuff. And that's okay, right? We get this opportunity to upskill and add little layers and pieces to our process as we go. And that's actually a really great gift because it makes us more human and relatable as we're going through our sales process because we don't have it all figured out, right? We're always tweaking and improving in our business too. And our prospects can feel that, and that draws them into us and helps them feel really good about working with us too.
Mhm. Mhm, definitely true. I've learned so much throughout my business, having my own
Yes.
business, and, it's unbelievable what I didn't know when I first started. I think if I knew what I didn't
Mhm.
know, I would not have even gotten started. But so that's a bit of a
Yeah.
blessing too. Um, Curious, just one more last question on the sales
Sure.
side of things. I
Mhm.
know, and I've experienced this on sales calls, like, just being on the client side myself, about, like, creating that scarcity, like, if you sign right now, you get this deal or you this extra thing.
Mhm.
I always felt a little bit uneasy about that. I've never done that. I didn't feel good when
Mhm.
that was offered to me. I felt rushed. I'm the kind of person that I need to think about things. I'm a deep thinker, as most creatives are,
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
introverts. So I need that time to deliberate and think. How do you feel about that particular tactic in sales?
I don't really think it works for the creatives that I
Mhm.
serve.
Yeah.
There are things that are real. Real things are start dates. So
Yeah.
if you want to create something that feels honest in terms of a sense of urgency, one of the tools that my I had this one client, she was very system. That was like her thing. But she would pull up a calendar and she would show the person she's speaking with, okay, so I have October 10th. I also
Right.
have October 24th. My November spots are booked, and then my next one would be December 12th. Which one of these feels like the right time frame for you?
Got
It's
it.
not making it up. It's showing it
Right.
in a really supportive way. So that's one of the ways you can do a time bound. A lot of my, especially with website projects, we do a lot of stagger start, and I
Yep.
teach how to stagger start out your client roster. And so that's one of those techniques that's really nice for that. Another way that you can be honest about it is to say, I only have one more spot this month. If that's true, then that's true, right?
Right.
The authenticity of that will come through. And so that's another way that you can use a little bit of that scarcity, but to do it in a way that's very
Mhm.
real. Sometimes, and this is a tool I have in my back pocket that I have whole podcasts I've done on Colby, and Colby's a tool I
Oh,
have in my
yeah.
tool belt that I use. But what I would describe you as, based on your characterization of your thought process, that tells me you're a fact finder. You're
Yes,
somebody.
I am. I've done the Colby test.
So that
I
tells
am.
me, as somebody who's sharing with you and talking about how we could work together, that you're going to need a minute. But
Yep.
my goal is to support you to decision, right?
I
Yes,
like that.
she's for me, or no, she's not. Leaving you in the land of maybe just leaves that fact finder spiraling, right? So my goal would be to say, you know what, Angela, I love that you have a process you want to go through, some questions you're going to, journal on or think through. How about this? What kind of timeline do you need to be able to go through your process and know that you have enough information to make your choice? Maybe I'm for you, maybe I'm not. Either way is fine. When can we reconnect? And so I'll set that next call, that multi-step second follow-up call, so that there's not that weird, like, awkwardy reach out thing where I gotta like email you or
Yeah.
like, we already know we're talking again. Two things will happen. Either one, you will get on the call with your decision, and that's
Mhm.
great, yes or no. Or you'll know before the call and you'll email me and say yes or no, and that's
Right.
good too. But there's none of that awkwardness that you get if you don't set your follow up. So that's a way to support a fact finder through their process. And I sometimes have a little tool that I give people too that they can use as an aid to make that choice. Um, but it really, we could have a whole nother conversation about
Right.
Colby
I'm sure
and
we could.
sales with Colby. But yeah, it's a way to do it.
Oh, I love that. I didn't even think about I've done the Colby test, as I just told
Mhm.
you, but yeah, it was
Yeah.
super helpful for me to know
Mhm.
how I am, like, how I work
Mhm.
through things and what I need,
Yeah.
and when I'm spiraling out and doing too much of the fact finder thing, but I hadn't ever thought of using it, approaching it from the sales perspective, like,
Yeah.
what that person might be in the Colby
Mhm.
realm and how I can
Yeah.
support them, like you said, through their decision-making process. Because we all are different, right? Some people are
Yeah.
just like, "Yeah, let's do it," they're the quick start or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but I guess it's having that in the back of your head and being able to identify via, like, what you're hearing about
Mhm.
who you think what type you think they most are and how you can support them. I love that
Yeah.
thought.
It's a really powerful thing because people, I mean, I write a sales page for someone like you. I don't buy off of sales pages. I'm a quick start buyer. You overwhelm
Yeah.
me with information, it's the quickest way to get me to say no.
Oh,
Right?
interesting.
So it's about understanding the different buying styles in relation to Colby, and it's super fun. We'll have to do another call. We'll have to talk
Oh,
about it because
wow.
it's super,
So do
super
you work with
supportive.
your clients on Colby? Like, do
Mhm,
they do the
mhm.
test for you? Oh,
Yes,
cool. Cool,
yes,
cool.
yes.
Yeah.
When I know somebody's Colby score, I can align their business in a way that's gonna
I
do two
love
things.
that.
One, it's gonna get them to take the action that they need, and it's also gonna tell me what will work and what won't work off the bat. So they'll come with an idea. I'll be like, okay, that's not going to work. And here's the reason why, because you're wired to do it this way. And this
Mm,
business thing is asking me to do it this way. And those two things are
yeah,
never going to align for you. So let's make a
so
different
true.
choice to get to the same outcome.
I love that. I'm gonna have to go back through my score and just
Yeah, I
see
want to
what
know.
else I could do in my business to tweak it to be more me. But I
Yes.
love that. And if anybody listening, they want to know about this, it's Colby, KOLBE A
Yes.
test. That's the one I did, the
Yes.
Colby A.
A.
And you
Yeah,
can do it
absolutely.
online, or you can just connect with Eryn and she'll help you do
Yeah.
it, help you run through it,
Yep.
and
Absolutely.
help you
Absolutely.
fix up your business according to your strengths and whatnot, and
Yeah.
and
It's fun.
support you in your other areas where you're more challenged. But wow, this has been a value-packed episode. I love that. I think
Yay.
we covered everything. The only thing I do want to mention is I know you have a creativity showcase event. I mean, it's an ongoing, recurring event that you
Mhm.
have created. I'll just put up on the screen here that you've
Cool.
created for creatives.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about this event? How does it work? And where can people find it and sign up?
Yeah. So this is one of those moments of total alignment in business, right? So I have creatives who want to build relationships with one another because they often get referrals or they get brought in on a project when a gap for a client is there's a gap. So they need to get to know each other and begin to build those deeper relationships to lead to referrals and collaborations. So that's great. I also know that when people come around me and they experience me and the way that I just care about them, that helps my business. And I also know that the concept of having something that's sort of introvert friendly, more relaxed, is a really supportive thing for most of the creatives around me. So I created Creativity Showcase, first Friday of every month, noon Eastern time, totally free, very relaxed. I was called the Bob Ross of networking events last month. It
Love
was
it.
a huge compliment. I felt so just because my creatives feel comfortable. They can get to know each other. We do go deep. We create relationships, and the ripple effects of that get to be seen. So you get to come hang out with me a little bit, get to know me, also make some creative friends, and it's a really fun thing. So it is coming up the first Friday
Mhm.
of every month, depending on when you're hearing this. It's the first Friday of every month. So you can go to erinmorgan.com/resources and sign up to join me for Creativity Showcase.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see you there. It's super fun.
Yeah, I've been meaning to connect with one of those, and I guess it's coming up in a couple days because we are at the first Friday of the month. So this is
First
really
Friday.
great timing if you're hearing this live right now. So go ahead and sign up at Erin's website
Yes.
that you see there on the screen. I'll also put it in the show notes for later events. And Erin, where else can people connect with you and support you?
Yeah, I really hang out on LinkedIn. It's the place I like to build relationships and connect with people. I love to refer. So when I'm making those connections, I'm like, let me just pop you in a LinkedIn message, right? So I hang out on my website, but also on LinkedIn. And I really welcome anyone to, send me a connection request. Let's get to know each other.
Yeah, awesome. That's how we got to know each other. So
Hmm.
yeah, go ahead and find Erin and Erin's website as well. I will put this in the show notes. It's just her name, erinmorgan.com. You can find her and her services there. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Erin. This has been very
Thank
informative and helpful.
Yes, I really appreciated it. You got some great questions. We got to go a little deeper than normal, and I love that. So thank you so much for inviting me in.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for tuning in. You can find me and a free resource for you, a website tool that I show you the 10-step framework that I use with my clients to help them turn more clicks into customers. You can get your free copy at beboldbranding.com. And thanks for tuning in.